Hey everyone, this is Jack from the Cardboard Herald, and we have done it! Yes! We have hit 5,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel, which is a milestone that I'm incredibly proud of and thankful for all of your support. And as part of the celebrations, as promised, we are taking a look at the same top 10 that I listed last week of my favorite games and telling you everything that sucks about them. And come on, remember, they're my favorite games, but I'm going to dig into them a little bit. So here we go. First off, Flamme Rouge. Now, can we just talk about the little miniatures that they use, the little bicycle riders? What kind of plastic did they use? Is that even plastic? It feels more like chalk. It is the most brittle material that I've ever seen, and right out of the box, they are falling apart, falling down, need glue in order to adhere to the little statues. We definitely could have done better on the production on this thing. And speaking of that production, have you taken a look at the different rider artwork that is for each of the different player colors? It's just a reskin. How cheap can you be? I mean, this game should be beautiful and full of diverse competitors, just like the front of the box, but instead it is essentially just the same body with little tiny changes and a jersey color change up. That is definitely a little disappointing. And can we just say the game is a little linear? Next up is Viticulture. Essential Edition, Regular Edition, what have you. Now, if you're an esteemed gamer and you're playing Viticulture, such as yourself or myself, and you're not playing with Tuscany, you're like, what am I even doing with my life? This game is nowhere near as good without Tuscany included. This is a consolation prize to play with gamers who like less complex games, and you're just sitting there desiring Tuscany. So you gotta include the expansion, right? But when you include the expansion, do you even need to make wine? I mean, there's whole victory paths that you can just circumvent the entire purpose of the game, which is bananas. Or should I say grapes? And I'm not even sure that they contacted Tom Hiddleston to use his likeness for the back of those Papa cards. Number 8 is Pax Pamir, and can you get a more hipster game than Pax Pamir 2nd Edition? I mean, that's the game that people who are like, well, I'm not into typical area control games, but Pax Pamir is a game that I'm really into. And yeah, it is stuffy and snobby, and I'm sure it's not meant to be that way, but that's certainly the way that my sucky friends perceive it who don't want to play it with me because they're into worse games and I'm into all the coolest games. I mean, as far as teaching the game, it's not the most complex game, but strategically speaking, it is denser than Mrs. TCBH's Banana Bread, which is pretty intense. And now we're on to the Castles of Burgundy, which the original version looks like it's a bunch of paper cutouts, and the new version just looks like Christmas vomited onto the table. And so you got this cosmetic thing going on. On top of that, they keep on trying to force me into this Castles of Burgundy team mode. I have zero interest in playing team Castles of Burgundy, yo. 7 Wonders Duel is up next, and I have nothing bad to say. It's a perfect game. Moving on. Okay, fine. If you want something bad about it, there's more than 7 Wonders, okay? Now, Kingdom Builder. I mean, people talk about how smooth and refined and deceptively complex it is, that it gives you all these different options, which are all so great, but your turn is still dictated by the flip of a card, and you may be like, oh man, it can be anything but trees, and it'll be a great turn, and you get trees, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this forest? This acquires me no functional value whatsoever. And when 1/5 of the cards is forests or sand or whatever your bane of your existence is, then that can be a little bit of a vulnerability in a strategy game. Now, Eclipse Second Dawn, or Eclipse New Dawn for the Galaxy, whichever. Where did they find these aliens? I mean, did the designer just sit down with Star Trek or Mass Effect and go like, what's the most generic archetype alien races that I could come up with, and just Put them on the table. Yeah, sure, we need a 7 of 9 robot Borg race. Yeah, absolutely. We need the progenitor race who's allied with the ancients. Oh, yeah, definitely got to have that in there. The humans are going to be, colonialist factions vying for control, just straight out of StarCraft. Come on. These could have been a lot more interesting in such an interesting game. And speaking of the game being so interesting, for all of the development that you could possibly do in the game that makes it such a celebrated and monumental success, at the end of the day, combat just ends up with dogpiling at the center at the end of the game, and people are just chucking dice over and over again to see who got most lucky to win. I kind of threw up a little bit in my mouth just saying that. Now we're on to the big dogs, the top 3. We have Terraforming Mars, Disco Thanksgiving, the color scheme incarnate on the table with about as cheap of components as can possibly be, which is kind of fitting in line with a bigger narrative along with Flamme Rouge as another one of the games that were on this list. I mean, this could have been so much better, but fortunately, it was saved by this great design, and the expansions do the same, right? Cheap components, but have great design. No, the expansions are, for the most part, blah. They make the game wider without adding any meaningful depth to them. It just creates a lot more busy work in an already busy game, except for my darlings, Prelude and Hellas and Elysium, which I'll never say anything bad about because those are wonderful. Now, Root. I mean, the only game that's more hipster than Root is Pax Pamir 2nd Edition by the same designer. I mean, these are games that are designed for people who are like, I'm not into those combative games, except for Cold Whirly games. Which I guess may be the exact definition of me. I mean, I'm into bicycle games and I'm into the Pax Pamir and Root. Anyway, talking about Root, I mean, this game pretended to have a decent solo mode to start out with. And it wasn't until a fan-made variant, which was then made official, that there was a decent solo alternative to the terrible initial mechanical marquise, which is all you got if you don't end up getting the print-and-play expansion on BGG, or you get the proper expansion itself. And on top of that, it's just kind of an unstable game. I mean, there's an incredibly complex system in order to assess the reach and stabilization in the game that is already a barrier to entry to get this already dense game onto the table. Also, those cute animal critters are hiding a deceptively cutthroat game that some people might initially expect it to be a very different experience. And coming in at number 1, my favorite game of all time, Spirit Island. I mean, let's talk about a game that has complexity issues out the wazoo, where I never want to play it 4-player, let alone 5 or 6, when they give you all of the equipment in order to play that, because the decision matrix just becomes exponentially high as everyone's sitting around the table going, well, what are you going to do? I don't know. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do on the turn? I mean, that problem already exists even at 2-player, let alone 3-player and higher, and then you add in adversaries and the complexity goes up dramatically as people examine all the potential options and strategic capabilities that are at your disposal, and everyone else's decisions may inform your own decision. This game is crazy complex. And then you give me these crazy high complexity spirits that just ramp up everything, all the different possibilities that everyone is going to have to contend with. I don't really enjoy playing with them. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I want to play Spirit Island, not Spreadsheet Island. And also, who has time for scenarios? Really? Does anyone play with those? Whew. Okay. That's our list. Wow, that was a lot to contend with, and maybe there was some suppressed observations that came out in the midst of going through all those. And ultimately, it comes down to these are my top 10 favorite games of all time. And some of that may be in earnest, and some of it may be projection upon the people who feel they need to antagonize my 10 favorite games of all time. And you know what? it's fun to be able to make fun of your favorites. And that's it. What are some of your favorite games and some of the problems with them, and how do you rank up with the issues that I have with these 10? Bottom line, thank you so much for all the support that you've given Cardboard Herald throughout the years, and that I hope that you'll continue to do as we continue to grow. Thanks again for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald. If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcast, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.